Nuclear Butterfingers Part 2, International Boogaloo.
All right.
We're going to go over the times that the American military had nuclear whoopsies in foreign countries.
Oh, even worse.
Yeah. Our first incident happened on December 5th, 1965, in the Philippine Sea.
Okay.
The USS Ticonderoga had left the U.S. naval base in Subic Bay a month prior to that, and it was traveling about 68 miles away from Kikai Island in Japan. The Ticonderoga was an aircraft carrier that had been built during World War II. On board the Ticonderoga was a Douglas A-Force Skyhawk. These were jets that the American military used from the 50s all the way through the 70s.
Okay.
So you like Vietnam jets and stuff, you see a lot of them are these, or anything during like Korean War. It's called the loft bombing method.
Just dangling.
No.
Oh.
This is a trip. So the pilot does a loop. So they fly forward and then they climb up.
Okay.
Well, as soon as they're going upward, they release, and they're going at a very high speed. They release the bomb. So whenever they release the bomb while they're flying upward, and you'd think in your head, well, wouldn't that just fall down? No. It flings it upward, way higher in the air than what they are. And then it does a loop and flies the fuck out of there.
That
Now,
sounds like a maneuver for Maverick.
yeah, jet was an expensive radioactive version of watching your toddler spill something in slow motion. During a training exercise, Lieutenant Douglas Webster piloted the A-4 aircraft as they were rolling the jet from the hangar bay to an aircraft elevator. Well, as part of this training exercise of moving this jet from here to there, it was loaded with a B-43 nuclear bomb. This was a 1 megaton hydrogen bomb. Somehow, the jet was pushed backwards by the elevator, and it started rolling backwards. The crew realized, like, oh gosh, this thing's going to the edge of the aircraft carrier. So they start like waving their hands, blowing whistles, trying to do anything to get the pilot to hit the brakes. Apparently, he did not see or hear any of the signals, and the plane rolled all the way off of the aircraft carrier and into the Philippine Sea. It rolled off the edge, and whenever it rolled off, it flipped upside down, fell flat onto the water, and sunk very quickly. Lieutenant Webster, the jet, and the nuclear weapon sank what they're estimating to be 16,000 feet. The Department of Defense was able to keep all of this quiet for 24 years.
Wow.
But in 1989, the incident was revealed. Japan was not thrilled about this and had a diplomatic inquiry to get more details, because it's like, what do you mean there's a nuclear bomb that's like 68 miles off our coast? Last time y'all brought nuclear bombs over to our place, it did not go well for us. So they were pretty pissed. The next nuclear incident took place a whole month later.
Oh, I didn't get turned that no accidents in the workplace calendar very far.
Yeah, I didn't get to stay there very long. It was about a month and a half later, on January 17th, 1966, over Palomares, Spain. But essentially, it was carrying 4 hydrogen bombs with 1.1 megaton yields in each one.
Jiminy Christ.
So, yeah. Now, unlike other incidents that I've gone over, which are almost always training exercises, this one wasn't a training exercise, and it wasn't them relocating a nuclear weapon. This aircraft was flying an actual mission for Operation Chrome Dome. This Operation Chrome Dome was a Cold War operation that the American military had to make sure that we constantly had armed nuclear aircraft in flight in case action against the USSR had to be enacted quickly. So
Okay.
this is all that time before we had ICBMs, where essentially it's like, you do something, no matter where it is, we can shoot a missile from Rooster Poot, Kansas, that will go right into Moscow. The B-52G was about to begin its second mid-air refueling during this mission. And as it approached the KC-135 tanker, so the big plane that has all the gas in it, it was approaching it up at 31,000 feet. So that's like just shy of 6 miles in the air, I guess.
Pretty high up there.
Yeah. The B-52G approached the tanker too fast. And normally whenever that starts happening, the pilot in the tanker and the people watching will be like, whoa, break away. And then they'll let some space and then they'll try to even up their speed again. This did not happen this time. And the bomber struck the nozzle that's hanging off the tanker, off the big boom, so this big stick hanging out of this giant plane. And whenever it hit that boom, it caused its left wing to rip off. And then the boom itself tore into the B-52. The explosion that resulted, killed all 4 people on the taker plane. It's a big plane full of gas, so it explodes. They all die. And then 4 out of the 7 men on the B-52 bomber, they lived, but 3 of them died. One of them, I think he even died in the act of ejecting. It was all just a horrible, just disaster. But it got worse. The aircraft remains and the 4 nuclear weapons fell near the Spanish fishing village, Palmares. One of the bombs landed in a riverbed and was mostly intact. Just big bomb, just falls, nothing. Just splat. 2 of the bombs exploded on impact. Now, although the nuclear reaction from the nuclear material in it was not triggered, it still had a bunch of plutonium in it that just dispersed in the explosion. So essentially, it was 2 big dirty bombs.
Yeah, sprayed that shit everywhere.
Yeah, so it sprayed all. It put all this radioactive contamination in an area just under a square mile. Now, plutonium, which was in both of these warheads, has a half-life of 24,000 years.
Oh.
So the plutonium that ended up there, it's not going to stop being dangerous anytime soon.
Doesn't sound like it.
No. Cleanup efforts have been going on there for decades. And they still, even to this day, continue to find radioactive material. They even found 2 trenches filled with radioactive dirt. Politicians from Spain have tried to attempt to calm people down in the months after the incident. They would go swimming in the beaches at the beaches near it to try to be like, "Hey, it's okay. Don't you come on back. And now, despite snails in that area testing to be radioactive, there have been no indications of health issues in any of those areas.
Really? So, what do the snails look like?
Probably like snails, just snails with a tumor or something.
Glowing, super fast.
Maybe. Fourth one, when their initial search for it, all they found is the parachute tail plate. So the spot that pops off for the parachute to come out. So the plate, they found that. This is pretty good indicator. It means that the parachute deployed. And when they're looking around and they're not finding the bomb, they're like, uh-oh, and they look out towards the Mediterranean Sea. The bomb was eventually found at around 2,550 feet below the ocean, or below the Mediterranean Sea, on March 17th. So 2 months after the incident, on the dot, they found the bomb underwater. They attempted to bring the bomb to the surface, but dropped it and this caused the bomb to get lost again.
You can't make this shit
Now, a
up.
little more than 2 weeks later, they found the bomb again. So it took them 2 more weeks. But this time it was at 2,900 feet deep. So it's like,
Hang on to it.
it's one of those things where it's like, oh God, whenever you barely grab something with your fingers and then it goes a little further out of the way, and you're like,
Yes.
shit. However, this time they were able to successfully recover the bomb. To cap this whole incident off, part of how they were able to find this bomb was because of a local fisherman from Palmares named Francisco Simo Orts. He witnessed the bomb falling into the ocean, and he told the Navy. They hired him as like a scout to help them, find the area where the bomb landed. After the bomb was recovered, after they got out of the water, Francisco shows up at a U.S. District Court in New York with a former Attorney General he was Attorney General during Eisenhower's administration as his lawyer to claim salvage rights to the nuclear bomb, which I'm sitting here thinking that Attorney General had to like go out of his way to go solicit this dude and be like, hey, come here, I got an idea. Because according to maritime law, if someone identifies the location of a ship that is considered salvage, the person who identified the location is entitled to money if the salvage is recovered. The amount is usually 1 or 2% of the value of what was salvaged. This bomb was valued by the Secretary of Defense at $2 billion. The U.S. Air Force settled out of court with Francisco for an undisclosed amount. All that is known is years later, Francisco was known to loudly complain that the Americans did not keep their promise about his payment. Now we'll go to our final nuclear debacle of the day. It happened on January 21st, 1968, near the Thule Air Base in Greenland.
Okay.
Captain John Hogg, a B-52G, same plane as the last one, with 6 other men in his crew. You had seven men crews were pretty much normal for those.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, we have a bomber carrying 4 B-28 FI thermonuclear bombs for Operation Chrome Dome. Unlike the last one, we don't have a dramatic mid-air collision. This flight met disaster because someone put some cushions in the wrong spot. Someone put 3 or 4 cloth-covered foam cushions in front of a heat vent. As the flight followed its Arctic flight plan, the crew got colder and colder. The co-pilot, who had taken over to relieve the pilot for a little while, opened the engine bleed valve, which would draw hot air into the plane. No one noticed. Nobody could tell. It was still freaking cold, and it wasn't getting any better. But then they started getting hot, but not just like comfortably hot, like way too hot. They're like, okay, we went from freezing and now I'm sweating my ass off. The cushions in front of the vent caught fire. Despite the smell of burning rubber, they did not immediately locate the fire. It was like tucked away behind like some metal plate or something like that. So they weren't seeing like the actual flames.
Yeah.
By the time they did find it, it was too large for them to put out. They exhausted both fire extinguishers that they had within 5 minutes.
Damn.
And failed to put this fire out. The pilot requested permission for emergency landing, but while he was doing that, the plane lost electrical power and smoke started to fill in the cockpit. Everyone but one co-pilot bailed out successfully. And the one fatality, that co-pilot, it happened. His name was Leonard Svitenko, and he sustained a head injury trying to jump from the bottom hatch of the plane. And so he goes to jump out, bangs his head, dead. Sucks. He's the only one that died. The empty B-52G continued flying without a crew, just flying off into the sunset until it eventually crashed about 7.5 miles west of Thule Air Base. The plane smashed into to the sea ice of North Star Bay. The 1.1 megaton explosives inside each, so it's 1.1 each of those 4 nuclear bombs exploded on impact. All 4 blew up. Like the other one, the nuclear reaction did not occur, but just like in Palmares, it was essentially 4 gigantic dirty bombs that spread out all this radioactive material all over the place. The large explosion from the crash scattered parts of the plane across a 1 mile by 3 mile area. This crash dispersed plutonium, uranium, americium, I don't know, radioactive stuff, and tritium. Now, Greenland is a territory of Denmark. So the Denmark and American governments both teamed up to start cleaning up the site because there's nothing to recover this time. It didn't like, oh, this is our nuclear weapon. We want to make sure that you don't have it. Instead, it's like, oh, well, it blew up all the place. You want to help us clean this up? And so they began Project Crested Ice. People taking part in the operation were constantly dealing with temperatures as low as negative 76 degrees Fahrenheit.
That's pretty damn cold.
It is. And winds up to 89 miles per hour.
Oh, that's inhabitable.
Yeah. It's just nasty. This is why you don't go to Greenland.
Why do they call it Greenland? Nothing green there.
From what I understand, now this could be folklore or it could just be like something I heard when I was a kid. It was done kind of like to trick people. It's like, oh yeah, no, it's great. You know, the Vikings were like, hey, we got this really great spot. It's awesome. It's green. It's wonderful. Stay away from Iceland. It's horrible. Go to Greenland. You know, so.
Oh, marketing.
Yeah. So the conditions for the cleanup were not ideal, and it led to numerous equipment failures. I mean, they were like having like their batteries would keep going dead too fast because, you know, a lot of times with batteries, it's a matter of heat being the energy. So they'd have to like shove it under their coats to try to extend the battery life. And they spent just under a month trying to undo or at least reduce the amount of damage that they did to the area. The Danish officials did not want any, like zero, of the radioactive ice or wreckage anywhere near Greenland and insisted that America remove the ice and wreckage from the area and take it to the U.S. for disposal. In 1987, 200 Danish workers that took part in the cleanup unsuccessfully sued America for workers' compensation due to health issues from the radiation exposure. In 1995, the Danish government paid 1,700 of the workers that worked on cleaning up the contamination for their injuries. They paid them 50,000 kroner, which I don't know what that is. It's 50,000 Danish dollars. Apparently, that amount was not satisfactory. And they kept pushing, you know, saying, hey, you know, one big payoff is not going to help us here. In 2011, the Danish government provided a report stating that the radiation dose for the workers in that cleanup was less than the recommended exposure level. So they're like, hey, you're fine. Take your money, shut up. A 1995 survey of 1,500 of the workers that worked on that ice showed that 410 of them died from cancer. The workers were 50% more likely to develop cancer than the general Danish population.
50%?
50% more likely.
Damn.
Yeah. The final bit of controversy from this incident cropped up in 2008 when the BBC, you know, the British news, claimed that America only accounted for the nuclear material from 3 of the 4 bombs and said that there was a whole bomb's worth of radioactive material still floating around in the North Star Bay. Sorry. The Danish government put together a commission, and their study, it took them a whole year, said that no, all 4 bombs in their material were accounted for. I'm still going to count this as a happy ending. They got most of it. I mean, granted, I have no plans to go hang out in that area without a lead suit, but if the Danish government's happy, I'm happy too.